In the previous episode, we saw how Gnosis can be understood as a process of transformation of perception, moving from a fragmented experience of reality toward a unified recognition of what is already present within us and around us. But this transformation of perception leads us to a deeper question. If the way we see can be transformed, then what within us is capable of seeing differently? Gnostic texts introduce here a central but elusive term, a term that appears across several traditions of the Nag Hammadi library, particularly in the Apocryphon of John and Pistis Sophia. This term is the Pneuma. Yet, defining the Pneuma is not an easy task. It does not seem to be an idea, nor an emotion, nor a simple part of the human psyche. It does not belong to the same register as thought or feeling. It appears to designate something more fundamental, something that traverses the human being without being reducible to it. In this episode, we will try to answer this central question. What is the Pneuma? Can it be lost, forgotten, or recovered? And above all, what is its true nature? Is it part of the human being or a reality that comes from elsewhere? And if its origin does not lie within the world of the Pneuma, then where does it come from? The term pneuma comes from ancient Greek pneuma, meaning breath, respiration, or spirit. It refers both to something intimate and invisible, and to something that moves through and animates life. In Gnostic texts, the pneuma is never presented as a clearly defined object. It is not described as something that can be directly observed or reduced to a simple concept. Rather, it appears as a presence. In the Apocryphon of John, as well as in Pistis Sophia, the pneuma is evoked as something belonging to a deeper dimension of being. Thus, in the Apocryphon of John, it is written, "He placed within them a spark of light." And in Pistis Sophia, "And he breathed into them a spirit of light." But this depth, this spark, is not psychological in the modern sense. It is not a hidden layer of personality, nor is it merely a religious symbol. The pneuma points to something else, something that is not produced by worldly experience, but coexists with it. Something that is not entirely generated by the psyche, but rather traverses it. That is why, in Gnostic texts, the pneuma cannot be reduced to a mental function or an emotional state. It is not a content of consciousness. On the contrary, it is what makes consciousness of the self and of the true nature of reality possible. In other words, it does not designate what we think. It may instead designate what within us makes perception, vision, and recognition of the illusion of material reality possible. The texts do not confine the pneuma to a strictly reductive category, not an idea, not an emotion, not a simple component of the soul. The pneuma seems to stand elsewhere, at the boundary between what we call the human and something that exceeds it. And from this first approach, a necessary question emerges. If the pneuma is neither thought nor emotion, nor a simple psychological component, Then what exactly is this principle described in Gnostic writings? In Gnostic texts, this question is never explicitly formulated, yet it is constantly implied, for the Pneuma appears to occupy a very particular position. It is present within the human being, yet it does not seem to originate entirely from it. It is in the human, yet its nature is other. On one hand, the Pneuma is intimately tied to human experience. It is not external to the body. It is not a separate entity located in an inaccessible elsewhere. But on the other hand, it does not originate in the material world, and its nature is different from that of the Pneuma. It does not seem to arise from the psyche, nor from bodily mechanisms, nor from the constructions of sensory experience. Rather, it appears as something that passes through the human being without being fully produced by it. That is why certain passages in Gnostic texts suggest an origin that transcends the visible world, an origin that is neither matter nor psychic structure. From this perspective, the Pneuma occupies an intermediate position, a kind of threshold interface, a form of presence that connects the human being to a reality beyond it. This is why, in Gnostic traditions, the Pneuma is often associated with a higher dimension of being, as an inner orientation toward an illusion to be dissolved and a reality to be recognized. Thus, the Pneuma seems to belong to two realities at once. It is within the human being, itself trapped in the Pneuma, yet it points beyond the human toward the divine. And it is precisely this dual belonging that makes its nature so difficult to grasp. For if it were purely human, it would be reducible to the psyche, and if it were purely divine, it would be entirely external to lived experience. Thus, from this ambiguity emerges a deeper question. Should the Pneuma be understood as a part of the human being oriented toward the divine, or as a trace of the divine present within the human? At this stage of our reflection, it becomes necessary to distinguish several levels in the structure of the human being as it appears in Gnostic texts. For the Pneuma is never presented in isolation. It is always understood in relation to other dimensions of human experience. The first of these dimensions is the psyche. It corresponds to the realm of lived experience. It is what connects us to the world as it appears through perceptions, emotions, memories, and attachments. It structures our way of inhabiting the world and positioning ourselves within it. From this perspective, the psyche belongs to the realm of becoming, the world as it is experienced in constant transformation, what Gnostic texts associate with the Pneuma. Within this structure, one may also distinguish what traditions call the soul. It does not constitute a separate level, but rather a symbolic dimension of the psyche. It expresses the way human experience relates to meaning, the sacred, and the idea of continuity beyond immediate experience. Thus, the psyche encompasses both direct experience of the world and this symbolic dimension traditionally associated with the soul. It becomes therefore important to distinguish psyche from Pneuma. For while the psyche fully belongs to the realm of worldly experience, the Pneuma seems to belong to another level of reality. Another dimension appears in certain Gnostic texts, the epinoia of life. The term epinoia comes from the Greek epi, toward, in the direction of, and nous, mind, intellect, thought. It originally refers to an oriented thought or an intuition directed towards something. In the Apocryphon of John, the Adamic myth helps us understand this dimension. At the moment of Adam's creation, the demiurge Yaldabaoth, under the influence of the Aeon Christ, breathes into the human being a power, a divine breath coming directly from Sophia. This breath can be related to what Gnostic texts call the Pneuma. Realizing too late his error, Yaldabaoth casts Adam into the lower regions of matter, our world. It is there that the Aeon Zoe, the epinoia of life, comes to instruct Adam about the causes of his fall and hides within him to remain unseen by the archons. But Yaldabaoth, seeing the human being radiate with intelligence, a reflection of a Pneuma he neither understands nor perceives, creates and encloses him in a body in order to limit him. Thus, for the Gnostics, both the epinoia of life and the Pneuma are of divine origin. One is an emanation of the monad hidden within us, the other is the divine breath that traverses us. One is the intuition of the divine within us, the other is the aspect of the divine that must be recognized. At this stage of our reflection, a new question arises. If the Pneuma is neither a function of psyche nor a simple expression of epinoia within us, then what is its condition within the human being? Gnostic texts never describe the Pneuma as a fully manifest reality. Rather, it appears as an inner presence whose status varies according to the state of consciousness. In certain readings of the texts, the Pneuma seems buried within an existence entirely absorbed by material experience. Not absent, but unrecognized. Present, yet in a state of latency within the structure of human experience. As if the psyche, in its relation to the world, could occupy the entire field of perception and prevent the recognition of this deeper dimension. From this perspective, the Pneuma is not something that disappears. It is neither destroyed nor lost. It is rather in a state of latency. It oscillates between two states. A state of concealment, where it remains invisible in ordinary experience, and a state of unveiling, where it becomes perceptible as an inner dimension of being. This passage from one state to the other is not described as an external event. It seems to depend on an inner shift of consciousness. In the previous episode, we saw that Gnosis can be understood as a process of transformation of perception, a movement from a fragmented perception of reality toward a unified recognition of what is already present within us and around us. But this transformation presupposes a deeper condition. For if perception can change, we must still understand what within us makes this change possible. For the Gnostics, the pneuma is not a part of the psyche, nor an emotion, nor a mental construct. It designates rather that which within us makes recognition possible. The epinoia of life is the preliminary movement that initiates this recognition. It can therefore be understood as the intuition of the pneuma, the inner movement through which it becomes perceptible. This recognition allows us to see differently, to go beyond a fragmented reading of the world. In other words, Gnosis is not merely a way of interpreting reality, it presupposes a transformation of perception. And this transformation, in turn, presupposes an inner and divine reality that Gnostic texts call the Pneuma. But this understanding of the Pneuma opens a broader question. If all human beings carry this inner dimension, why do they not all recognize it in the same way? Gnostic texts suggest here a fundamental distinction between different types of humanity. Some appear entirely absorbed by the material world. Others live in a tension between perception and intuition. And others still seem already oriented toward a deeper inner knowledge. In the next episode, we will explore this essential distinction, the three types of human beings in the Gnostic tradition.